Hi there, and welcome to Chapter 2. Today we're going to look at the chapter summary of the learning objectives for Chapter 2. The first learning objective is to describe environmental factors that influence market research. And right now there are some very important environmental factors that are influencing market research in the market research industry. The first of which is that market research has moved from a supportive function to actually being a key component of the marketing strategy and strategic planning function for organizations. The internet, e-commerce, and the greater availability of data sources and accuracy within data sources help to drive this change, and that's very important for people to understand. There is a need to choose the appropriate technology-driven tools and databases, and need for an understanding of what these different tools and databases are. We're going to be getting into these as we go on with the other chapters, but right now this is kind of an introduction to the overall process. The second question is, what are the various steps of the research process, and what are its particular steps? So the first step in the research process is to determine the research problem. What are we trying to address? What questions are we actually trying to answer? The second step is to choose the appropriate design that will provide us with the answer to the question that we're asking. Then we'll execute that research design, and then finally communicate the research results. So again, we've got 4 steps in the research process, and they are: determine the research problem, set the appropriate overall design, execute that research design then, and finally 4, to communicate the results. Now, there are 11 interrelated tasks that tie together to impact the accomplishment of these 4 processes that we laid out before. And the first is to identify and clarify the information needs. The second is to define the research problem and questions. Third, to specify research objectives and confirm the information and the value of that information. Fourth, determine the research design and the data sources. The fifth is to develop the sampling design and the sample size. Sixth, what are the measurement issues that we're facing, and how are we going to measure the appropriate responses for the questions. Then we will design and pre-test the questionnaire to make sure that we actually are going to be getting the information that we need to address, and that the questions are providing us accurate and appropriate data. 8, to collect and prepare the data. 9, analyze the data. 10, interpret what we find in the analysis of the data to be able to provide the appropriate results back to the client and answer the research questions that we have. And 11, to prepare and present that final report that does just that. So those are the 11 steps that help and are required to make the 4 steps in the process necessary. So you've got 4 steps, then the 11 steps. Now, what is the difference between an exploratory research design and a descriptive and a causal research design? And it comes out rather simply in that an exploratory research design is to try and help us get a little more clear picture of what actually we need to understand, or what information we have on hand. It helps to redefine what may be the initial problem, and it also helps us separate what we see as potential symptoms in the market from the causes of those symptoms within the market. In other words, why are we gaining market share or losing market share, and what are the causes of that gain or loss in market share, which would be the symptoms. They also help us to identify the information requirements for a more causal design that we would get into later. So that's an exploratory design. Now, a descriptive design produces data that helps us to get at the underlying characteristics, such as attitudes, intentions, preferences, purchase behaviors, evaluations of satisfaction or of behavioral intent for the future. We're looking for the basic questions of how, who, when, where, and why, so we can understand the marketing questions of placement, pricing, and the consumer decision process that goes into the purchase decision. The types of things that we will be addressing would be competitors, target markets, segmentation within the target markets, and other phenomena such as differences in satisfaction, or whether or not we've got issues based on regions of the country, or one group of salespeople doing a better job than another group of salespeople. Now, a causal design actually is getting at identifying what the underlying causes for the changes are. The descriptive can tell the correlation or association, whereas a causal design is getting at what causes or what is the underlying reason for. And we will be doing predictive analysis later in this course, and you'll be looking at regression, and that is as close to causation as we're going to be getting with prediction. We're going to be predicting overall satisfaction based on behaviors in this course, but that's the type of thing that we're going to be getting at with causals. It's also called right now in the market literature driver models. What drives satisfaction, or what drives sales, or what drives consumers to a website? We're looking at the things that impact that and create the flow to the ultimate marketing objective. And in that way, when we're able to understand the contribution of each of the possible variables, we are then able to identify managerially which tools we should target most, or put the most of our effort and focus on, to get the biggest bang for the buck. Now, the final question is to take a look at and understand what all goes into a research proposal. Now, in a research proposal, you have basically what is the purpose of the research, and what type of study we're going to be doing. Is it causal, is it descriptive, or is it an exploratory study? We will define the target population and the size of that population, and the sample design. How are we collecting the data? What type of a sample design do we have? What type of technique and method are we going to be using for the data collection? What research instruments we have, and then the potential managerial benefits from the study, as well as the cost structure for the project, and finally a profile of the researcher and the company to assess kind of the validity and whether or not the researchers have the appropriate credentials to be able to accomplish the tasks being requested. And finally, we will present examples of the types of tables we would be providing to the client, so they see the value and the information that we would be providing to them. Again, this was the basic summary of the research questions for Chapter 2 and the objectives. Thank you very much.